like, not to go too hard too fast, but like, I think that Emily is trying to take Frances's identity. What cocktail do you have on the go?
I have a Manhattan. It's been a while since I made one, so I was craving it, and yeah, it's been a long week, so I'm ready for Manhattan.
Oh, a Manhattan. I feel like that was always your go-to cocktail when if we went for dinner and then like went to a bar after. I feel like you'd always get a Manhattan. Just a
It's
little
still
bit.
my go-to. It's been one for years.
I love that.
Did I tell you I was rewatching Gilmore Girls over December? Like December was like a lot. Like first my husband got sick and then I got sick and like I had this whole like probably 3-4 week period where I was like in a daze, and it's like also the holidays, you're in that sort of days. But I was watching Gilmore Girls, and in the early seasons, like whenever they go to the parents' like fancy house, Manhattans are the main character's main drink for a little bit before they switch to martinis later on. So I was like, maybe that's where I got this drink from.
I feel like this is the most non-millennial thing for me to say, but like I've never actually watched all of Gilmore Girls. I've seen like random episodes. I used to watch it like if I would like stay homesick from church when I was like a younger teen. I would like catch it because it's always on like the W Network on Sunday mornings. But I could not tell you what the plot line was from like beginning to end. I know who the characters are.
Uh-huh.
Like the main ones, like Lorelai and Rory
Yeah. And Emily's the mom and Richard's the dad. Yeah.
and Luke.
Those are,
Yeah.
yeah.
But like, and I know that like Rory wants to go to like a really good school. And I do know, I have seen the first episode. There's something about it, like the like quick talking back and forth that like stresses me out a little bit. Like I was at Shirley's recently and she was like, oh, you should like watch Gilmore Girls. I'm like, I don't know if I can. Like, I don't know if it's like, it doesn't relax me. Like I want my shows to be like British and like not really understand what they're saying. And it's very atmospheric and that's more my jam. But I don't know. I should give it another shot.
I mean, like, it didn't age very well. You know, it probably
No?
aged better than a lot of those shows, like, from the 90s,
fair.
but it's still, like, it has its moments. Like, the whole cast, like, growing up, like, it was a comfort show for me growing up, and almost, like, kind of aspirational, because, of course, you see yourself in, like, Rory if you're watching from like a similar age, but looking back I'm like, wow, she was kind of shitty. She was really shitty, actually. She treated everyone around her like dirt. Like,
Well, now I want to watch it to
role
find out what
models?
you're talking about. I thought she was like a
Watch
goody
it.
two shoes.
Yeah, but
There's some evil
is she
in
though?
her.
But how's your week? It's been a little bit, so the last couple of weeks, how's it been?
It's been good. I've been busy. I went, well, I guess I quit my job. Like I hadn't really said that before, but
Yay.
yay, I quit corporate life to go freelance, but I haven't actually started looking for work yet. I went to visit some family in Calgary, so I was there for like a week and everyone was sick, so I caught what they had. And then I drove to Montreal with our mutual friend and her dog and stayed sick, took the train back this week, and yeah, it's been pretty low key besides that. Like it's been like a lot of family time. I kind of had a moment where I was like, I feel like I'm retired because I went to Calgary and like one day I went bowling, one day I went golfing. Was puzzling this like 2,000 piece puzzle the entire time with my nephew, and I've never done a 2,000 piece puzzle before. I love puzzling, but those are intense, and like the whole family was committed to getting this done before I left, and we did.
Nice.
That was really, really fun. But I definitely felt like, is this what retirement's like? Like you just like golf and bowl and puzzle. Like I could get used to this. So I had a really good time.
That sounds amazing.
And then I just watched a ton of reality TV in Montreal. Like did not leave the house because our friend had come back from Japan. She was really jet lagged and I was sick. So we just like watched Below Deck all day, every night, which was great. Like cannot recommend enough. Sorry, I still have like a little bit of a tickle in my throat. But yeah, that was kind of, and I voted today for the first time in provincial elections because I was not a citizen before So anyways, it's been a fun
Amazing.
week. What about you?
It's been good. Nothing as exciting. That sounds so fun. Like the road trip sounds so fun too. Did you drive back too?
I took the train. The train is my favorite way to travel. Like if I could train everywhere, I would love it. Like it was 5 hours and somehow we were delayed like another hour and a half, which made no sense because we left on time. So maybe there was like we slowed down. I did not notice. I just wrote the whole time, read. Like I feel the most creative and excited on trains. So yeah, it was a really good time. Morty's here. He's blended in. I should take a picture of you. I'm not sure if you saw, but I posted to our story and I was like, I'm about to hit record and I wanted him in the picture. He was nowhere to be found.
He's like, I'm not ready for my entrance yet.
No. Hi, baby. Oh, hi. He's been very cuddly. How have you been? It's been a minute.
Yeah, I've been good. Honestly, yeah, nothing super exciting. It's been really warm here. Like it's like been 30 degrees the last couple of days. So we're in a heat wave, which is like extremely novel. And I'm like, I don't know how to operate with this kind of heat in February, but I'm loving it. It's really nice.
I'm so jealous.
Very nice to not wear a coat.
There's been so much snow here. It's like an unnatural amount of snow for Toronto, so I can't even imagine what it's like being in LA right now.
Well, I'm visiting soon, and we didn't have coats because we didn't bring them. And so we both bought coats, and mine came already. And I was just like wearing it in here while it's like 20 degrees out. But like I got it super puff, and I'm very excited for that. So,
is it shiny and black like mine?
It's matte. It's
matte. Oh.
But it is black, yeah.
I got a shiny black one. Our friend calls it my garbage bag coat.
You want to get into this book?
Yeah, let's get into it. There's so much that has happened. I'm like, how am I going to keep track?
Yeah. Okay, so we are talking about How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. It's funny. Every time I talk about this book, I accidentally say How to Get Away with Murder. Like I can't get this solved part right. But I love the title of this book. I love the vibe of this book. Honestly, I was so hooked by the whole premise of this. Like since we talked about reading this book, you know, like part of it is that in, I guess, present day, and part of it is like 30 years. I was saying 30 decades, 3 decades in the past. And it's just like, yeah, a kind of cool, sort of refreshing premise that I guess I haven't really read before.
Yeah, it was very interesting. I guess like, would you put this under the category of like a cozy mystery maybe? Like the stakes never felt super high for like the person trying to solve it, but it was like, I mean, they were actually. I take that back. She was going to lose everything. But I meant in like a current murder on the loose, which also isn't true. I don't know. It just felt like it didn't feel as high stakes as like it probably needed to be. You know what I mean? Okay.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. It was definitely more so like puzzling stuff together or like putting the puzzle pieces together more than like, yeah, I need to get this done before someone comes for me, at least in the first half.
Yeah, true. All right. I will try to do like a brief synopsis. Even though in the book it does jump back and forth, I'm going to go through one timeline and the other. So the first timeline is essentially Castle Knoll Diaries, and this is from 1965. And Frances is at a fair with her best friends, Emily and Rose, and she's given this fortune that she's going to be murdered. Imagine getting this kind of fortune. And Emily is kind of like this cruel friend who's always stealing her things, and notably a coat with these like stag buttons on it. She seems to be that kind of person who's just like a bit mischievous, like takes joy at the expense of others, like that kind of character. And ever since this moment with the fortune, Frances becomes obsessed with this idea of being murdered and seeks out to find out who her murderer is. And then a little bit more background. Frances is dating a guy named John, and Emily is with a guy named Walt. And Rose is in an off-on situation. I said situationship in my notes, and I'm kind of dying at that. But that is what it was. With a guy, she's in a situationship with a guy named Teddy. And obviously these are all teenagers, and they like to go to this place called Gravestown Estates to hide away and do teen things away from home, where they're all living with their parents. And one night the owner, whose name is Ford Gravestown, and his nephew Saxon catch them all kind of being mischievous near his property or on his property, and Ford essentially tells them what areas they can hang around in and then what ones to stay away from, which was a pretty generous offer from him, given the fact that like he could have just made them all go away. And through this, Frances essentially establishes a relationship or a kinship with Ford. They talk about chess up in his like house, and she seems to really like him. One night when they're at the estate, Saxon tells Frances that her best friend Emily is pregnant with her boyfriend John's baby. Frances freaks out, demands her coat back, and when she demands her coat back, she finds a revolver in the pocket, and this kind of like mess ensues where like the gun goes off on the wall behind Emily. Walt ends up like hitting Emily, and then they make their way to Ford for help because Emily's bleeding, and then Ford essentially drives them all home. And that's where we get to in this first half here. I'm not sure if we mentioned at the beginning, but we were reading up to page...
It was 23. Yeah.
Chapter 23. Okay, so that's kind of where that ends for that timeline. Then, meanwhile, we're getting our second timeline, and this is current day, and it's from the POV of Annie Adams. Love that name. I love an alliteration name. And this is Frances's great niece. And it's evident that years ago, Emily went missing, and Frances married, or like ended up marrying Ford Gravestown, who's now dead. And then Laura, who's Annie's mom, is Frances's niece and is supposed to inherit the estate until one day they all get mail saying that Frances has updated her will and is summoning Annie to the estate for a reading of the new will. And Annie wants to make sure that they don't lose their house in Chelsea because it technically belongs to Frances, but it's where her and her mom have been like living for all this time. Another thing to note that I didn't actually bring up, I probably should have read the actual fortune at the beginning, but the fortune essentially says to Frances that she's going to get murdered. It starts when she holds the queen in her hand, and to keep her daughter, or to keep the right daughter close. But Frances doesn't have any daughters, so there's some sort of right daughter out there. So that's what her fortune was. So all this is kind of playing in the back of Frances's mind. And I think everybody knows about this fortune too, so everyone's kind of aware of the fact that Frances is thinking about this all the time. All right, so when Annie arrives at Gravestown, she discovers that her great aunt Frances was actually murdered in her home. She literally like discovers her body there. And she also finds out that her aunt Frances has updated her will to say that whoever solves her murder between Annie and Saxon, which remember is Ford's son, who is, I guess, Frances's stepson. Or is it his son or his nephew? There's so many characters in this book.
Wait, Saxon?
Yeah.
Saxon is his... It's not. It's his nephew, right?
Yeah, I think it's his nephew. I don't think they had any kids.
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
Okay.
That's how he inherited the estate, because his I guess family, I don't know if it was his sister or brother. No, it was his brother, I think, died in that car crash. And then Saxon comes to live with him. He gets sort of the estate. Okay.
That makes more sense why Saxon wouldn't just be given everything, because he would be like the child of the man who died. Okay, so between Saxon, which is the nephew of Ford, and Annie, which is the niece of Frances, one of them needs to solve the murder, and they will inherit the estate. If neither solves it, it will go to Oliver, who this whole time I wasn't sure who Oliver was. And the catch is that like he can sell it all off if he decides to like companies or whatever. And like this kind of killed me a little bit. It's like, why? why is this weird, like, it has to be one of you two to solve it, and then one of you gets it, and if you don't, there's this weird, like, default, which is this person who who is Oliver?
So he's Mr. Gordon's grandson.
And Mr. Gordon.
Mr. Gordon is like, I don't know, like he's the one like reading the will and sort of sending the letters out and all that. And so I don't know if he the lawyer? I assume he's the lawyer.
I think he's a lawyer and then like a family friend as well. So he's like tight knit with the family. But it's so funny to me that it's like he's not family and like maybe he's a friend, but it's like, yeah, this other guy gets everything and decides what to do. I don't know. But then where does that money go if he sells it all? Like, does Oliver keep the money?
Yeah, that's a good point. I had the same sort of thing with Elva. I was like, who is Elva for like so long? And then I realized that's Elva? Saxon's wife.
Oh, okay.
But she's like kind of out of nowhere and also sort of feeling like she has some sort of ownership around. Around.
For some reason,
she was like hiding stuff. Yeah.
The whole time I thought it was his mom. That doesn't make any sense.
Maybe you're picking up on this too, but like some of the ages for me were pretty difficult to keep track of in this book too. And I think like generally, like I don't really read period pieces or anything like that. I'm not really big into like the historical vibe. Like I'm not into Bridgerton. Don't come for me. But like, you know
I won't.
Mean? So like reading stuff like this, I can't reconcile in my head sometimes like their actions with their ages. So even when we're talking about Gravesdown estate and Ford sounds so much older, like in his actions and his vibe and all of that. And for me, I was like, okay, this is such a funny moment for me because I was like, okay, he's like a Mr. Darcy character, and Mr. Darcy's like much older, right? And then I went and I looked it up. Mr. Darcy was like 27.
What? 27? Younger than us?
Yeah.
I'm not okay with that information.
So I think it's just this whole life.
Mr. Darcy's 42 forever.
Right.
No, I refuse.
I think that's what's happening in this book. It's messing with
So Elva is not Saxon's mom, but Saxon's wife. I guess that makes a lot more sense because like he would be older. He'd probably be closer to Laurie's age. Okay, yeah. I'm tracking, but it's so hard for me. It was one of those books where I was like, you know, like Elena Ferrante's books, she'll always have like that legend at the beginning, at least like her Neapolitan series. She'll have that legend at the beginning where it's like tells you every single character. So if you're having a moment where you're like, who is that again? You just flip to the beginning and then you're reminded. That. Like, I need that. If you have more than 5 characters, I need a legend. Like, I'm not good with remembering names. Please help me.
This could have used a family tree. I want a whole fucking diagram.
So we're not like, it's the mom. No, it's the wife.
Yeah.
Creepy. Okay. So, yeah. So Oliver can sell it all. Sorry, I'm dying at that. That was a bit of a pothole for me, but anyways, we'll keep going. So Annie starts investigating this, and in her investigation, she discovers that her aunt has been like rearranging roses that had these spikes in them. And Annie takes the spikes to Detective Crane, who is Teddy Crane's son, I think, who is somewhat chummy with her. But ultimately, an autopsy shows that her aunt died of an iron overdose and that it had to have been murdered. Like, this is clear from the autopsy. So Annie also discovers the Castle Knoll diaries and uses it to get to know her great aunt better, but it gets confiscated from Detective Crane as evidence, even though Detective Crane is aware of the fact that like Annie and Saxon are both vying for this like inheritance. He's still like, I have to do my job. Like I'm a detective, so I'm still going to be investigating this in the way that I'm supposed to. So when he finds this diary that's evidence, he's like, you do have to give it to me. So that gets confiscated. And then the final thing that happens just before the chapter ends is while going through a set of trunks that Annie has recently removed from the Chelsea house, so that's the house that her and her mom are living in, and sent to the Gravesend estate, which is where she is now and where her aunt was discovered dead. She discovers Emily Sparrow's skeletal remains, and at least it's believed to be her skeleton because it's that coat with the stag buttons on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how this all ends. And I have so much to talk to you about here.
Okay, two quick things. Just, we're talking about the general vibe of this book. I've realized the more we talk about these books, like I really, it's really dependent on my overall content consumption during that time. So I feel like what kept coming up for me was Saltburn, like the vibe I was picturing for all of this. Have you watched this?
Oh,
like
yeah, I love it.
Yeah, right. So that general sort of vibe with the like labyrinth and all of that, and this very like these like wealthy kids just sort of whiling away their time. Not everyone's wealthy, of course, but like that general sort of situation. But yeah, Saltburn kept coming up for me like as just sort of inspiration. And I feel like as I was reading this, I was like in that sort of headspace of like that sort of moody, vibey atmosphere. And so a lot of this book was really visual for me, and I don't know if it was kind of like because of that. So I'm curious, like, did you feel like this book was really visual as well for you, or maybe that's just sort of my sort of content bias here?
For the Castle Knoll Diaries section, so like when you're going back in time, that was very visual for me. Like I felt like I could like picture the characters. Maybe it helped that there was only like 4, and like I don't know, it felt very. It's funny because even though the murder happens later, that was the time that felt the most foreboding, if that makes sense. And just like these 4 kids and like this like sinister nature of Emily, like she almost felt like a villain. So I think the portrayal of like her and Frances for me was the most like visual and alluring, as opposed to the other timeline where like it didn't really feel like there was as much of a villain. Does that make sense? And Saltburn,
Yeah.
I love that reference because it kind of has that similar quality. Like the whole time you're getting this like foreboding feeling throughout. Like I remember watching that movie and there's a couple moments where I thought like the family was going to be like these big killers because everybody seemed like a little evil in it. And I think that was kind of the point. So it did kind of have that like feeling. But having said that, like it definitely made me feel more drawn to the 60s timeline than I was to the more current one. Like, did you kind of feel the same way?
100%. Yeah, I was just like, the chapters are pretty short, right? So I felt myself sort of like it was a page turner to get to those diary moments, and I was like really sad when there weren't diary moments for a little bit. Like I really wanted more of that. And yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe those were the moments that were a little bit more visual and sort of gripping, and you're really trying to figure out like what happened like in that moment, because it also feels like Frances has the answers, right? And like the title is telling us that also, right? It's sort of like pointing us towards that more and more. So definitely felt a big draw there myself too.
Yeah, I feel that. What do you think about, not to like belabor the point, but like what do you think of Emily overall? Like for me, she is the most interesting character here. She's not my favorite character, but like she's the most interesting one. It seems like she has this like negative background with her family. It seems like her mom is like pretty abusive, and she's like always stealing things from Frances and then claiming them as her own. And now it seems that like she's pregnant with Frances's boyfriend's baby. Like she's very sinister, and I don't know, I feel like she could really do something dark here. Like she feels like a villain. She's giving psychopath. She's giving Tyler from Come and Get It, where it's just like chaos for the sake of chaos, like that character who just wants to like see how much she can stir the pot before people just like boil over. I don't know. I just really enjoy reading about her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I think like it's interesting because we got a little bit of that moment of, you know, what her mother's like. We got to know Fiona a little bit. I think that's her mother's name. And that's what I was lacking with Tyler, right? I was like, I didn't know like why Tyler was the way that she was. Yeah, and it's not like much, but now I know that her mother's abusive and it's sort of trickling down and it's sort of making her feel like I feel like she's she wants what Frances has, right? Like she wants that sort of affection, maybe, even though she's in a relationship with Walt, but maybe she wants more of what Frances has. But you know what really struck me was that it's not just that she's imitating Emily, she's also having Walt imitate John. Oh my God, Morty.
He's
So
back.
cute.
Say hi.
Hi, Morty. Aw. But what do you think that's about? Why do you think she's having Walt imitate John? Like, do you think something is going to happen there?
I think it's less. I think she is imitating Frances, which means that she needs every other imitation to take place. Like that is my like, not to go too hard too fast, but like I think that Emily is trying to take Frances's identity, because there's all these moments where like, isn't there a moment where their other friend Rose mentions how like Emily's like always trying to be her, and then they had like people sometimes like couldn't tell them apart, or they had a similarity or something. I can't remember what the line was, and maybe I was reading into it and reading more than what was there, but I don't know. I feel like Emily is pretending to be Frances. And so anything that Frances wants or likes, she is now going to adopt because she wants to embody Frances. I'll give you my hot take right now. I think that that body is actually Frances's. I think that like Emily took on Frances's identity. This is such a hot take. I think that like the current Frances that died is Emily. I think she stole her identity. Like didn't Frances ask for the coat back? Remember, she was like, "Give me the coat back." Like Frances gets the coat back with the sag buttons. So even though Emily stole it, Frances has it.
There's a switcheroo somewhere.
There's a switcheroo. Now, a part of me is like, well, they're teenagers. Their family would know their facial differences. But I don't know. That's still what I want to happen.
Might be.
Either way, okay. I do think that Emily wants to be Frances. And that's why she's getting Walt to imitate John. Because she's like, she wants to fully be her.
Yeah. Yeah, I buy that. It's funny, like in terms of the murder, my head went somewhere else. Like, where is Laura? Why is Laura not there? It's always the sleeper characters. Like, I feel like busy. She has something to do with it. But is she though?
She's always been like, there was a phone call. I did feel suspicious too, because there was a moment when like it was like her gallery opening or something, and like, why is she all of a sudden like successful now that Annie's gone for 2 days? And I can't remember. There was a phone call that was really suspicious between Annie and her mom, and then her mom's like, okay, well, I have to go. And I'm like, go do what? There was a moment where everyone was trying to figure out if anyone who was in the will meeting could have had time to like be there, but that wasn't possible. So like Oliver, Saxon, Elva, Annie, they were all at this, like, I think it was Oliver's office. Oliver's the lawyer, right?
No, he works for that real estate company.
Okay, sorry. Whoever the lawyer is, they're all at his office when like Frances was supposedly murdered. So they were all like, okay. Yeah, they were like, it can't be any of you guys. And I was like, okay, well then there's Laura. Like Laura's not present for any of this. Like Laura has the most to lose, because if Frances dies and they don't get the estate, then like she loses like the Chelsea house.
Yeah. I want to talk about the small town. Like, we're talking about how we can't keep the name straight, right? Because there
Yeah.
are so many people. But everyone knows each other and has known each other for the last 30 years. Like, their grandparents know each other. So now, like, the kids know each other. Everyone knows everything about each other, like, down to, like, the medics, the paramedics, and I don't know, isn't Saxon like he does autopsies? Everyone knows everyone's business. So this part of it is really fascinating too, because like with Frances, like everyone knew her pretty intimately. So whether it's someone who wasn't there for the will reading or not, like they probably knew her so well that it would have been easy to figure out like an opportune time. And that part of it is so freaky to me. That amount of people knowing you that intimately, I don't know.
It's scary for a bunch of different reasons. Like one, like I love the anonymity of like being in a city.
Me too. Yeah, I love that.
Right? You can
It's
just
very
like
comforting.
It's so comforting. And it's so funny that it's like if you do see someone that you know, then it's like I don't know, there's like I don't know how to describe it. Like today when I went to go vote, the woman who was like doing my like, you know how you like give the like hidden thing to someone and then they're like, okay, and now I'm putting it through this thing, and they're like walking through the process that there's no like voter fraud happening. She's like, now I'm gonna do this, and then here's your button. And the whole time I'm like, you live in my building, like I know you. I see you in the elevator all the time, but I'm gonna act like I don't know you because it's weird, because like I don't actually know your name, and I'm just like smiling and trying to be nice. And like, do I tell her I know her? Is that weird? Is that going to feel like I'm committing voter fraud? Like I'm trying to like deter her attention from this thing? Like, anyways, what I'm getting at is that it is lovely to like live in a city and be anonymous, and then also just have this kind of like compliance with other people that you're like, even though I know of your existence, we don't need to talk beyond this. Anyways, I feel like I'm going off on a huge tangent.
No, I feel that. Well, I'm excited to find out what happened, who it actually is.
Is it
Laura?
Frances? Sorry.
Is it Laura? Is it Frances or is it Emily?
Or is it Laura the murderer?
Yeah.
Laura's also a possibility. Oh my gosh.
Someone's impersonated Laura. That's why she's never around. There we go.
Love that. Love that.
Okay, let's read the second half and we'll talk about it next time.
See you at book club.
See you then.
Bye.